Welcome to Yes Also. I'm your host, Suzi Barrett, and my guest today is indisputably improv royalty. Will Hines was a longtime UCB New York performer and teacher, and for a while he was the director of the training center there. He's now a favorite of the UCB LA stage. He plays in UCB's ASCAT and as a member of the long-running team, The Smokes. And most recently, he's written a book called How to Be the Greatest Improviser on Earth, and he's also founded its companion school, if I may say that, the world's greatest improv school. Will and I had an amazing conversation. We go head-to-head a little bit and debate our differing views on how to best teach premise initiations. And we go on a delightful deep dive about the early days of UCB New York. He talks about what it was like to witness Fred Armisen's SNL audition, if you can believe that. There's lots in here that I think you'll enjoy. If you want to see pictures of Will from these early days, check out our Instagram at YesAlsoPod. And here's Will. My guest today is an absolute improv emperor.
Yeah, that's how I describe it.
The czar of improv. Just spilled
coffee all
piping
over
hot coffee.
Yeah, I'm good. You're probably getting a bigger than UCB audience for this, so
yeah,
probably relative to your audience, I'm like longtime UCB guy.
Yeah.
Right. And like one of the like teacher coaches who's been around forever. I feel like every improv community has different varieties of those old dudes, not necessarily dudes, but the people who've been around forever in their like IO, Chicago.
The people who still wear 90s jeans.
Yeah, right. And they've like studied with Dell or whatever, and they like been doing it forever. And
so you've primarily done UCB both for your training and for your playing and teaching.
100%
right?
training was UCB. I mean, I took like workshops occasionally with like other people, but very little. And then only after I published that book, I went on the road a little bit and did stuff now and then, like in other theaters. You've done this, like going to other countries. And that wakes you up to other like ways of thinking, just watching the shows,
right? And
kind of getting like a feel for other communities. Like that kind of works different muscles, not as intensely as training at a place, but you know, you get exposed to some different vibes and stuff.
You get exposed to different vibes. Ooh, a beaded curtain in this theater. We improvise while sitting on pillows. Okay.
We do chill, yes, and
yeah, we do yes, sure.
Yeah. All good. Yes. all good and
yeah. Yes, if you want to.
Yeah. No worries and.
Was your UCB monolith intentional, or was that just by accident?
By accident, because I like was a computer programmer, or really a bunch of just.
You were?
Are you serious?
Yes.
Oh yeah, big time.
Wait,
I mean, well,
what?
sort of.
big time computers.
Oh,
Apple.
Huge. Yeah, I made Apple. No, I mean big time. Like it was my full-time gig for six or 7 years. Like. Cubicles and programming and stuff like that. But I was really kind of a mess in my 20s in the way that I think a lot of creative people are. Like I switched jobs. I was a journalism major out of college, tried to write for newspapers, tried to be a writer, taught myself computer programming in like 1994 when it was like temporarily quite simple.
Taught yourself how? Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Just like I had Microsoft Word on my work computer for my boring day job, my normal administrative, whatever it was, day job. And I realized that in Microsoft Word, you could open up something called Word macros and like write little commands to automate tasks, right? And I learned that. And that is a very simple computer programming language.
That is very simple, and you've already lost me.
Right.
You had me at cubicles and programming stuff.
Right,
I was with you. That's the extent of...
For whatever reason, that was straightforward for me, and I just started learning computer stuff, and I was so broke, and I was trying to be a writer and a little bit of stand-up in New York City, and nobody cared. I was 26, 1996, nobody cared. And when I knew like 5% computer programming languages, I immediately got offered day jobs that were like nothing huge, but for me, broke in Manhattan, it was like, oh, do you want to make $35,000 a year with benefits?
Well, pleat my khakis.
Like, yes, exactly. Leave me. And so then I just did that for 6 or 7 years, and But I got really bored with my world, and I just thought everybody was a dud, and the senses of humor of people in day job lands is truly uncool and rough. I just felt like such an alien that I went looking for creative communities, and I found improv stuff in New York, which in 1998, 1999 was the UCB Theater. And there was like nothing else.
Right.
There was like little short form communities. There was Gotham City Improv, which was like Groundlings East. There was Chicago City Limits, where a lot of our mutual friends
that's
spent
like short form
time. Yeah, it was a short form theater that did like long form classes. It was a pretty nice place, but it was really small. And it was once UCB arrived and was like shows 6 nights a week, 1 million classes, and you can go to shows for free while you're taking classes. And back then everything was relatively cheap. UCB's become a lot more expensive, but
right, it was like $5 or free.
$5 are free, $5 maximum for a show, mostly free.
And
even the classes were like $300.
Cheap, a steal.
And coaches were like $40 or $50, and you'd get like Andy Daly would be your coach. And he wasn't like known as Andy Daly, but somebody'd be like, oh, let's get Andy Daly. You'd be like, who's he? And he'd show up and he'd be like, oh, the funniest person I've ever met, who's also quite nice or whatever.
Right. And super smart and obviously knows
good at it.
Yeah.
Like, so it was this insanely sort of ripe time for improv.
And with a huge X factor in New York too, because like SNL cast members would show up at shows. You go see ASCAT and like Fred Armisen is in it.
Yes, exactly. You go to ASCAT and like, I mean, I saw Fred Armisen's SNL audition. It was at the UCB Theater.
Wow.
Like,
they brought an audience, or you snuck in with a
they
mop?
did this weird thing where they did 2 halves. One half was like all these kind of like UCB favorites, like Paul Scheer, Jack McBrayer, doing a Herald.
Wow.
Yeah. Or it was very loose Herald, like just sort of improv sets. And then they called that. And then the second half was Fred Armisen coming out and doing a couple of his characters. And even watching, we were like, well, we know who's going to get it. The guy who's already doing an SNL style thing. It's not going to be Paul Scheer's sublime tag out.
Well, gotcha. So the first half was also part of the audition. It was like these guys are auditioning
Lorne Michaels
with
was
a
like
Herald
in the crowd.
Wow.
Yes, isn't that nuts?
That's nuts. Were you watching Lorne's reactions? Yeah, that would be the show, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you remember the characters that Armisen played?
Yeah, he did like the drummer bongo guy. He's like, oh, ixo mio, whatever, like where he like makes mistakes. And then he did the political correspondent where he like holds up a newspaper and he's like, can you get a load of this? Like, oh, but he like never makes a point or says anything.
Yeah, what is this guy? What is this? Yeah. Incredible. And that was that was the 2 halves. And then there was no one else. And then
that's all I remember. Unless I'm remembering it wrong. Then another thing that happened at that time was Tina Fey was the head writer, and they were thinking about making her an on-air talent. But so they kind of auditioned her by her and Rachel doing Dratch and Fey sketch show at UCB, which that was their Second City show.
And that like, because I arrived in Chicago and started doing Second City classes like the year or 2 after they left, Dratch and Fey left. And I remember arriving in Chicago and everyone talking about like, oh, it's too bad you couldn't see Dratch and Fey. It was the best sketch show ever. And, you know, Tina Fey is now the head writer of SNL, and Dratch got hired for, like, they got hired for SNL from that show, right?
Yeah.
So now cut to a couple years later, Tina Fey is firmly the successful head writer of SNL, and they make her re-audition for the show.
I don't know the politics of it.
No, Will, tell me.
It might have, maybe she wanted to do it to prove, hey, let me show you that I can do this.
Let me remind you of why you loved me in the first place.
Knows, for whatever reason, they were doing Dratch and Fey at the old UCB space in New York, 22nd Street, and you could go Wednesdays at 6:30. They did it for like a month, $5. And now Tina Fey nobody knew Tina Fey, right? We knew, comedy nerds knew, oh, she's the head writer of SNL.
Yeah.
But no one like recognized her the way she would become like super famous within like 5 years. But Rachel Dratch was famous. I mean, she was like on SNL and like super funny.
Yeah.
I remember being stunned at like, as successful as the UCB Theater was at that time, these shows were like not sold out. Because they didn't promote stuff in an organized way. The website was crap. You couldn't like buy tickets in advance. You had to sort of be on it a little bit. Not that much, but you'd like, oh, let's refresh the website. Oh, Dratch and Faye, like Rachel Dratch, $5. I guess I'll go.
How insane.
And then you go and you give $5. You're sitting there. You're like, is this really just happening?
It feels like a speakeasy or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you're rewarded for this kind of like rooting around behind a building and finding an open door.
So there was nothing else in New York, but also it was so cool that I didn't want anything. I was like, I remember telling like my normie friends when I was like in level 3 or whatever at UCB and like doing all the shows, I'm like, I have found a hidden kingdom that is so cool. Like it is unbelievable. Like the worst teams at this theater have like some of the funniest people I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And to the point where I was suspicious of my own, I was like, I must be wrong. Like I must be overestimating it, but I underestimated it. Like this was like the future of American comedy was like there. And the UCB was going to explode way beyond what anybody thought. It was so small at this point.
Well, and at that point, correct me if I'm wrong, but was a lot of that talent orbiting Amy Poehler? Like, was she sort of that because she's a co-founder of UCB, was she bringing SNL friends?
Definitely
to the
Amy
stage?
was the star, and like anything Amy, even before Amy got famous, she was like the most charismatic and most obviously talented, and everyone just loved her. You know, she's just so nice and funny and like charming that, I mean, the most popular person in the community by a long shot.
Yeah.
But I actually think it was the 90s Chicago scene was the mafia that was powering this. Like Adam McKay was friends with like Ian and Besser. So he would like bring SNL people over because he was the head writer before Tina.
Right.
I think he got Tina hired or something like that, or was one of the voices recommending her or something. Like that whole throng of 90s Chicago, like Andy Richter, Tim Meadows, Jill Soloway, now Joey, the UCB4, John Glazier, Dorff, the Conan writers, Tina, Rachel, they were all friends from IO 1992 or whatever.
Yeah.
So like, I don't think they needed, Amy was a huge part of that, but I don't think it was like she was it. Like I think Ian could call Brian Stack and be like, do you want to do ASCAT?
Right. I forgot about all the other, like the SNL writing talent, the Conan writers. Like I forget there's that whole like behind the curtain crew.
So this is like 1999 New York. They had met like, I think about how compressed this time frame was. They'd met like 7 years before. And I think Adam McKay was actually the one who broke out before anybody. Like Adam McKay doing I'm actually not a total expert in this, but like him becoming head writer. You have a
beard. I'll listen to you.
Okay, I have a beard. I'm fascinated by the 90s. I mean, I saw the second wave of it in New York when they were all like early 30s TV writers and kind of all still best friends or whatever, and just doing insanely blue, fast improv on Sunday nights for free at the UCB theater. Yeah,
blue was kind of a hallmark of UCB, like in the old days. Even when it started out here, I remember like that was kind of like
really? It was noticeable.
A badge of pride. Yeah, like there's
just how foul, just how crude they would get.
Like Paul Russ took a shit on stage.
Yes, I've heard about this.
Like there, like stuff like that, or being like really offensive on purpose, like Jesus bits, and
it's so
people
funny
pissing in buckets, and
yeah, and just like the so much of the scenes were sexual.
Right.
And silly. And like, I don't know, I guess I'm trying to think of why that happened. I first noticed it because the AV Club in The Onion reviewed ASCAT in like 2002 or something like that. And to me, ASCAT was like beyond reproach. I was like, this is the best improv ever. Yeah. These people are geniuses. No one else knows how to do improv right. And then the AV Club kind of said, one of the most reliably funny shows in Manhattan, $5, it's a steal, or free if you're willing to wait in line. That's the way it was. The 7:30 one was $5 and you could make reservations, and 9:30 was free, but you had to wait forever in line.
Right.
And I would be like, I'll pay $5 and like not wait in line.
And I mean, that's smart. I don't know if they did this intentionally, but smart business on their part, because that line around the block really builds buzz. Like I know people who fell into UCB because this was in the later space, the one under Gristides.
Yeah, 26th Street. Right?
Yeah, they would see that line and be like, something happens here. What is it?
Yes.
And they just got in line, and then it changed their lives because they became improvisers because of it. You know,
if we get into premise prov, which who knows if we'll even get there, but like when people criticize UCB's improv style, which I kind of think of as Besser prov, like pulling premise, initiating hard. That's kind of what the UCB brought to the conversation. Hardcore game of the scene playing.
Yes.
And when people at other communities, I mean, if someone doesn't like it, that's cool. But if somebody is like a jerk about it, like smug about it, like, oh, I don't like to do it in that cheap, gimmicky way. I'm like, does your theater have lines around the block?
Right.
Do you have like 200 people waiting to see you do improv? Like, no, because you suck. And like, you should shut up. Or if you do have it, then you have every right to be smug about this other way. I get like angry about it.
You as a venomous heckler or any type of bully is so funny.
I just would be
you
in
suck.
I would be in theaters where there'd be like 4 people in the audience. They'd be like, we don't do game of the scene. I'd be like, well, okay. No one likes it.
It's literally
like,
that.
do what you want.
Like, well, and how's that working out for you?
I mean,
yeah.
It is art. You're free to do it however
Sure.
you want. And if you're just like, hey, we don't need a crowd, we're happy doing this, that is cool.
Yeah, to
Some
me,
people get attitude with my home theater, and I'm like, you're out of your mind. Like, this was a miracle. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, to me it was the opposite. Like I had spent years
doing
IO,
right?
IO, Second City, and then worked at Boom, and Boom was all short form, so that's different. But like, you know, I arrived back from Boom in LA and did UCB classes, and that's when the light bulb went off. And I was like 28 at the time. Like I'd been improvising for years, but I was like, oh,
is that true? It was a light bulb.
Yeah. And as soon as we learned Game of the Scene, I was like, oh, there's a way
Tell
to
me about
do
this.
it.
Tell me about this. Like,
I had felt so like at the mercy of my scenes are sometimes successful and sometimes not.
Okay.
Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I didn't know why it did or didn't. I just knew that sometimes we had like a great scene and sometimes we flopped.
All right.
And UCB gave me the seat belt.
Was it a Besser class?
No, who was my? No. I never had them.
Was it Seth? Or something?
It was Seth Morris. Yeah. Well, and
Seth Morris was my first improv coach.
Even before him, Donna at the time, Fineglass.
Yes.
Yeah. Right, because I got to start at level 2 because I had done other improv before I graduated from other schools. That was like a rule they had. Like if you've graduated from other programs, you can start at level 2. I don't know if they still have that.
They did that for a long time. I don't know if they still do.
But it was Donna, because it was that was level 2. It's like as soon as they introduced just this idea, one unusual thing, and just hit that and heighten that. You're heightening and exploring one unusual thing. Boom, it changed everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you weren't resistant to it.
No, I loved it.
Now, don't you find that some people who come up in an IO or really any other way, like, are resistant to that?
Yes.
They find it to be sort of, I don't know, too writerly or too controlling or something? And are you sympathetic to that because you came from that other world?
I'm sympathetic to it just because all brains are different and all talent is different and people have different preferences. Just like I'm not going to stand in line at a pizza place and be like, no, you have to get pepperoni and pineapple. Right. It's the best.
Right.
It's like, if someone likes only sausage and no crust, eat that handful of sausage. Like I can't... I tell my students this is what worked the best for me or what made the most sense to me. It's what my brain loves. Yeah. But also I don't only teach UCB method.
Yes,
I use it as a tool, and I'm able to also, because there's things that I value and love about the things I learned at Second City and IO as well. I try to incorporate all of that. And I think I'm able to like pivot. If I see a student responding better to that stuff, then I might lean more on that and do just a sprinkle of pepperoni and pineapple. Right.
You know? No, I think that's smart.
Yeah. Brains are fascinating, and also this is like it's art and it's creativity. It's etheric, like or ethereal, like it's like how do you get someone to be a better jazz musician? It's like, well, I don't know what do they respond to, and where is their creativity and what is their comedic voice,
Yeah.
you know?
All right, let's get into
Yes.
let's get into premise initiations.
Hit me.
Okay, so for all my enthusiasm about UCB, which is real, and I especially felt lucky to see kind of early days. By the way, before I get to premise, when I moved to LA in 2014, and UCB LA was well established and had already been through like 2 or 3 generations of people, maybe more, depending on how you measure that, But I could feel like, oh, this went through some kind of similar thing where there at one point was a very small community in LA with really good people that had not yet got big crowds or something. Mm-hmm. And then within like 5 years had become like a thing in LA. Mm-hmm. So like, I'm not 100% sure of who was there fast, but it felt like Paul Rusted, Neil Campbell were there pretty early.
Yep.
And you were there pretty early.
I arrived.
The Sentimental Lady crowd was there pretty early too. The Convoy guys showed up pretty early.
Yeah, and the Last Day of School guys.
Yeah, and then some of the New York expats like Colton Dunn showed up pretty early. And Seth Morris, of course, who'd been huge in the UCB New York scene, and
Billy Merritt, Will McLaughlin.
Yeah, and then a little bit after that, your Joe Wengerts and the Smokes people started
trickling,
right? Right, so I could feel like, oh, it happened twice. It happened in New York, and then it happened here too, which got me even like more excited. I was like, that's crazy. It wasn't just like lightning in a bottle. Like, they did it
surfing.
Twice.
The wave keeps coming. Yeah.
It was pretty wild. Okay, so, I think that the central thing that UCB brought to the long form conversation was game of the scene, obviously, but also premise initiation. And I think they're a little bit different, but they get tied up together.
Right.
Game of the scene is what you said, like one unusual thing, explore that. But just that by itself does not dictate a fast scene or a slow scene or a surreal scene. You could do a very grounded, slowly heightening game of the scene easy.
100%.
And not be invalidating anything about game tenets. You also could do super fast, tag out, crazy, be playing game of the scene. The thing that and I actually think taken alone, game of the scene as a principle would not bump that many people. Because even then it's really just if you want to have one game per scene, or do you tolerate multiple games? You could do like a monoscene where every character has a game and you kind of focus on one and then focus on the other. And that to me doesn't bump too much with game of the scene thinking to me. It's like taking turns or something. Yeah,
each character is sort of their own, they have their own character game. They have their own unusual thing. It's like when you play the Laurent, like at times you are playing the unusual character when your game shows up, and at times you teeter-totter to being the voice of reason for someone else's game to show up.
You call somebody on their bullshit, but you are oblivious to your own bullshit.
Exactly. Yeah. And it can work realistically, because my bullshit might not it might not even show up on your Venn diagram. Like if my thing is I'm like germophobic, right?
Okay,
sorry. And then what were you gonna say?
I was gonna make you Republican dad.
You're Republican dad. I'm germophobic. How will they ever get along?
Right.
But yeah, like those games can help each other out. We can find ways to play our own game off of the other person's thing.
Yeah.
But you could be like, why are you wet wiping under the couch?
Right. I could call you out on that, but
yeah. And then you can have an opinion about it. See, this is the mass media. The mainstream media has made you think that COVID's under your couch.
Boy, oh boy. You know what? I say you lick it. I say you lick it.
Hey, if you're going to talk that loudly, can you put a shield over your face? See, like we can both have our unusual thing.
Right. Yeah.
Scene.
We did it.
We did it.
But so I would, as I became a teacher or whatever, and I was sort of a passionate advocate for like game of the scene, and I found people not all taking to it, like you say, people have different brains or whatever. And I was like, oh, there's like a lot of the ways that it's taught at UCB is premise initiation, like an opening that is very prescriptive, where you are expected to pull a very full premise from the opening and initiate with it.
Right.
And I think that bumps way more people than just like game of the scene thinking. And to me, they're kind of separate.
Totally.
Like premise initiation is like, I mean, I love premise initiations and I love ASCAT and having that ability, but I don't love only doing it. And I get tired if it's the only kind of improv that I'm either watching or doing. Because it's really hard to have a grounded scene with premise initiation. It's possible, but it's like, tends to be start crazy, get crazier.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you think, see, I would disagree with that.
Okay.
But I don't have like, just I feel like I've had lots of.
Tell me your instincts of that.
Well, I've had lots of experiences of playing grounded scenes with premise initiations. Like if you initiate if you pull a premise that's a grounded premise and you play it with a believable real world character and the other person responds in kind, then that's what you're doing. Scene. Yeah.
I guess you're right, of course, and I can think of many of those kinds of scenes that come out of that. But I guess I just mean it. I guess I'm thinking about it from the student's perspective. Like I'm a teacher, and when you teach somebody premise pulling, the level of absurdity of their scenes leaps up. I think because they're not confident that their idea is going to be understood, so they got to present a like heightened version so that it's clear.
They're trying to lob for really making it. Yeah,
it's like if they want to initiate a germophobic character inspired by the opening, they can't just
come in a hazmat suit.
Right.
Yeah.
They come in. They can't just say, "Oh, do you mind opening a window here?" Like that. They're like, "No way." It's like, "Hey, could you put a hazmat suit around your dick?" Because and it's like so crazy already.
I'd love to see that scene. Hi, I'm Will Hines, and for my SNL audition, my character is called "Will you put a hazmat suit around your dick?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sex positive.
So I don't think the issue lies in the philosophy of it. I think that like as you practice improvising, you're moving towards the nuance. I think maybe people swing really hard as they're learning it and they err on the side of like axe throwing.
Yes.
And then it becomes precision surgical cutting, you know?
Yes. But that happens. But okay. In my like recent classes or teaching or whatever, I've like really gotten tired of dealing with premise initiations and the effect it has on students. And I'm talking about people who are sort of like in their fourth improv class.
Yeah.
Third or fourth. Pretty new. But they have some reps. They got some basics and I'm thinking of students who have a sort of aptitude for it. They're all right at it.
Intermediate plus.
Yeah, intermediate plus and pretty good, but they're still got a lot to learn and they haven't had as many reps as they need, but they're pretty good.
Yeah.
If you teach them premise improv, it ruins them for like 6 months, I think. You have to all of a sudden, you can't just teach, here's an opening, get an idea from the opening, start with that. Because then you got to tell the other person to not and too much. Let the initiator have more than one line to make their thing clear.
Right.
And then there's the whole thing of how to initiate clearly. Try to use a phrase that was used in the opening. Try to, be very clear about what you're pulling. Only pull one idea.
Right. Now there's 17 rules building a fence around the first 4 lines.
Right, exactly. Yeah. The first 4 lines becomes like a whole new game of improv. And then once you're 4 or 5 lines in, it's back to what it was. It's back to just like
discovery and
yeah, or just like respond to it the way you would respond to it, given what we just did, or
right.
But like, no, you've been through this weird Rubicon of artificial thing. Like it's just too much. The initiations are too big, too full, require too much oxygen, and I think it's like bad.
Yeah,
I think it's like I think it is a useful tool, but it is not good to make people do that when they're in level 3 or 4. Yeah. I think it's like an advanced technique.
I hear that.
Except for like the 20% of the people who just naturally take to it. And it does not take that much of a lift for them. Some people, you're like pull an initiation from the opening, like, oh, I got it. And they do that. And it's no mental burden on them. they're available and present right after they initiate.
See, I feel like I've coached people to like when I see people having that issue, when it's like, oh my God, we're in the weeds on the first 4 lines.
Yes.
I don't take the fence away. I just simplify the fence building.
Okay.
I go like, look, boil down your idea. Like, what did you find funny about the opening? What made you laugh? Why did it make you laugh? Now present that in a line, and
maybe half idea instead of full.
Maybe half idea.
I think half idea is a great solution to this.
And we don't need to declare it with like a ridiculous, like we don't need to put a hazmat suit around your dick. Maybe it's just a little more emotion, like whoa. Has anyone had COVID in here in the last month?
Right.
Now we know that there's an attitude there. And if the other person doesn't fully know what the premise is, I tell them to like back off,
Yeah.
They're not going to introduce an unusual thing until we defer to letting the initiator drop the needle on what the unusual thing is.
Right.
And that tends to boil it down a little bit. Not to say like, oh, I'm such a great teacher, but like I have worked
I can hear
with
that helping.
Yeah. But I see your gripe.
But some of it is, I don't want. So I started the school, World's Greatest Improv School, because I like stupid, audacious names. And I'm like hiring my friends to be teachers, getting students. It's really fun. It's really
I got it.
exciting.
I'm not your friend. Okay, I hear that.
If we were better friends, you would have gotten the call.
Okay,
This is the way I wanted to let you know.
Just in case, I'm sliding my phone number to you right
totally
here.
Not necessary.
Okay.
I've got your number in my phone.
Great. Just so you know. And I do have unlimited minutes, so you can.
Okay, well, we just need to be better friends. That's not the problem, that I don't have your contact information.
Well, just in case it was.
Okay. And what the fuck was I saying? Oh, yeah. So, it's like I don't want the teachers to have to be as gifted as Suzi Barrett for it to work. Like, I'm a little bit like, I want the curriculum that we're devising, which is still in flux and a mess, frankly, to be sort of like, I could give it to even an intermediate teacher and it'll work. Like, what can't, I think about it like this. What doesn't miss as like an improv exercise or an improv form?
Yeah.
Like, yes, with a good teacher and a good student and reps, you can take any form and make it sort of affect any improv that you want. But each form tends towards its inertia towards a certain kind of improv.
Yeah, it's too much of a tailored suit, and you want to find the crew neck sweatshirt that looks good on everyone.
Right. A herald can be anything.
Yeah.
But a herald tends to, especially at UCB, be a vehicle for initiations.
Yeah.
It is like 50% of your energy, maybe more, is what is your initiation? What are you pulling from the opening? How are you initiating the second beat? That's a very UCB style herald.
Right. And it leans very writerly.
It's very writerly. It's very bossy.
Yeah.
It's not very discovery oriented. Most of it is like your ability to digest an opening fast and to pick what's grounded and initiate that in a way that the other person gets it. So yeah, it's I don't find those muscles to be useful in almost any other improv context.
Right.
Except for UCB Herald. If you do a monoscene, that tends to be a more grounded, maybe less heightened, slower scene, especially for students. They get better at grounding and kind of worse at game in a monoscene. Mm-hmm. But that's good if you're trying to get them to be better actors. And not worry about heightening so fast.
Go ahead.
If you're doing a slacker where there's like no sweeps and it's just like tags and
following person into each new room, or is that?
Yeah. But even like a loose slacker where you just like can tag to places. Mm-hmm. A fast form where it's chasing shiny things, that can be really good for like becoming aware of unusual things and playing with them immediately. It's good. It's bad for like commitment. It kind of your justifications kind of go out the window. It's a little silly and stuff. I look at what does the form do with no guidance from a teacher. I like to think about like the improv forms as little mech suits that like make people into certain kinds of improvisers.
Right.
Documentary openings does a certain thing to people. Pattern game openings does a certain thing.
I mean, everything you're describing is very much like the training at IO, or at least how it was when I was there in the very early 2000s.
Yeah.
It was like, we're going to give you the outline of this form, but then you just do it and see what it does for you and what it brings out of you. And
so what did you do for second beats when you were because you were on Herald teams at IO, right?
Yep.
So what would second beats be like? Because they weren't like real gamey
Mostly
things.
time dash.
Okay.
I want to say I don't even know if we learned analogous, and I feel confident that we didn't, because we were not learning what is the unusual thing about this scene. Right. We often went plotty. Mm-hmm. We often followed just like a shiny object about a character.
Yeah.
We're trying to heighten, so maybe it's like now instead of just two people, now it's this person in a classroom. So there's more people piping up, or when I say we often didn't succeed, the audience, even if they liked it, I often felt like, yeah, but we just found that by accident.
Yeah.
Or like that didn't relate really to the first scene.
Yeah,
or
it wasn't
like,
satisfying.
Yeah, it didn't feel connected, the first and second beats.
I mean, I don't like the sounds of that.
Right.
I wish there was like a middle ground. Like I go to UCB Herald Night. I haven't been. I went like 2 months ago. I don't know. It's like amazingly talented people. I think like the shows are good.
They're great,
but they're initiation heavy by design. And I want. There's got to be some way to have the sort of like direction of a game of the scene and not have it all be in the first 4 lines.
Yeah,
half idea is a good solution. Like I love a half idea beginning. Like in ASCAT, when there's like a monologue and you're pulling ideas from it, ASCAT has evolved to where it's like monologue 3 scenes. But I kind of missed it when it was like 4 or 5 scenes.
Yeah.
Because the 4th scene would be like your half idea scene.
Right.
You're
at the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, you've used all the clear premises, and now you're just kind of like, well, he talked a lot about bees.
Right.
And he was sort of scared of the bees. So I'm going to be a guy who's scared of bees, and it'd be maybe even a little bit less than half an idea.
Right. A wine tasting came up. We're at a vineyard.
Yeah. Maybe like a little bit more than that. Like a little, maybe he said like a snobby rich person wine tasting in Napa. Like there's like a little personality to it or something like that.
You grab that point of view, but you don't have like a full,
there's not a full
sketch
game.
idea. Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, I miss those. Like I like the mixture of someone who can come out like a Joe Wengert style pristine initiation. I love it. But then I also love just someone can't get a window open.
2 things. When you say you miss it, what do you mean? You think it's gone? It's vanished?
I think it's gone from ASCAT. I think ASCAT is like 3 scenes. It's like monologue 3 scenes. So like you've got a clear premise for all 3 of those scenes. And I don't see a lot of half ideas at UCB shows.
Gotcha.
I mean, I could be wrong. Also, I started an improv Substack because not enough of my life is about this stupid art form. And salty titles get attention. So I have been like rounding up my opinions sharper than I really feel them. Mm-hmm. So I find myself saying things like, there's no half ideas at UCB. And that's not true.
Right.
I mean, it's a little true that ASCAT is gotten kind of codified over the years a little bit more. And I do think that Herald Night has a lot of initiation, but it's probably not as bad as I say. But I'm going to say it's really bad. I'm going to say no half ideas at UCB, and it's worse for it.
You're becoming Miles Straw.
Oh, God. That's
push you to the end of the bar, give you a shot of Rumpelmans. No, it's not like that anymore. The other comment that I had about everything you just said is it seems to me like you're on the hunt for a solution to something where you can Here's how I see it. I see like if I'm an improviser who learns sort of organic meandery improv for a few years and then learns game and premise for a few years, and now I'm like 7 years deep and I'm finding my own style, those two kind of naturally meld together. And you can flip that order. Maybe I learn premise first. I'm way in my head. It's clunky.
Yeah.
Eventually it becomes more natural, and now I can have more fun, and now I'm more half ideas and it meets in the middle. And I feel like you're trying to solve for 8 years of experience by finding a method of teaching that gets people there, like a shortcut.
That's correct.
In year one. Yeah.
That is correct.
Do you think you can do it?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Because I have this school where there's teams and we make them do different forms, and I've gotten to just kind of watch like a lab, these good but green students trying different forms that we give them. And I don't have an answer yet, but like, we did full heralds the first term, and it was just too hard, too slow. It took them like 35 minutes to get through the structure, which I thought was too long. It's not really that long, but it was, I don't know, it was boring. And I was like, and then we switched to an opening and montage. No, don't worry about second beats. Just go for as long as you got 20 minutes. Do an opening, pull some ideas. That wasn't enough structure. They were lost. They didn't know what to do. So now we're doing we're heralds, and we're encouraging no opening heralds, where you have to go just off a suggestion, and the first beats are like kind of exploring, aimless, and then your second beats, you got to come in hard with like a premise declaration. Mm-hmm. And I like it more. I'm not ready to say that it's like the answer, but I think we'll find it. What I'm looking for is something that just by nature of its form promotes half idea premise initiations. Mm-hmm. Just somehow, the same way a monoscene lends itself to grounded play, some kind of version of the herald that lends itself to half idea starts. I don't want it to be all plot, time dash, aimless, nothing. I think that's bad.
Right.
But I think super writerly full premise initiations is also bad.
Right.
So I don't know. There's got to be a way to do it.
Of course. Yeah. And I think like that's where a lot of us like who have been doing this for a while, that's where we all land is like, like there isn't one right way.
Right.
And like, let's keep this baby in this bathwater and maybe like slowly drain some of this bathwater.
Yeah. Right.
When you were talking about like, we did it this way and we did it this way, it was slightly better. When you say slightly better, are you talking about your user experience as an audience? Like the comedy was better? Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you're not looking
the shows were better.
Gotcha. So you're not looking at like, your measure is not whether they're having more fun
whether
or
it's good
easier.
Training. Okay. Right. Yes. No, my measure is, does it work on the audience?
Does it make a better product? Yeah.
Yeah.
Which ultimately, that's what I think.
Because I don't like improv to purely be an exercise for the person doing it. I'm like, if it's not entertaining, then we shouldn't do it on stage.
I think that's what was missing from my early training was this notion of like, we should be making good comedy. Yeah. That is our primary directive.
That also was part of UCB, right? Like UCB was very non-comedy apologetic, like comedy forward. Like, is this funny? Do you think it's funny?
Yeah.
Like they were unapologetic about like, was your improv? Yes, me too.
And they did have a higher batting average. Like I went, and I should clarify earlier, I was talking about like people taking shits on stage and doing shocking stuff. Those were in like the weirdo late night,
the midnight shows.
But
Dirtiest Sketch Show.
Exactly.
Where it was like asking for like very crude things.
Yes.
But you're just saying that the fact that it was possible at all.
Yeah. They were doing like weird, dangerous, like experimental stuff, but they're like normal people, non-vampire hour shows were incredibly smart, savvy, great scene work, great acting, and really funny, really successful. Like the batting average was super high there.
I'm fascinated with how the UCB on both coasts got so good at just attracting smart, funny people in general. Because like I remember like after, it still happens, but in my initial UCB New York experience, it felt like every 6 months 10 really good people would like arrive.
Yeah.
And just kind of be around.
On a giant
just
ship.
On a float.
With these like swoopy hats.
Yeah, just like these aliens would float down. But I just remember like, it just felt like every 6 months it'd be like, oh, there's Joe Wengert and Neil Casey doing a show. And oh, here's Zach Woods, a 17-year-old jazz trumpeter who's like doing heralds, and he's like a weird genius. And
right. This another phenom.
Here's Ellie Kemper, who looks like she's going to be famous in 10 seconds.
And she was.
And she's like doing heralds.
Yeah.
You know, and like lots of, just felt like, I don't really think all those people were in love with Game of the Scene improv. There was just sort of like, oh, there's good people here. I want to be around the good people.
Right. I was going to ask you that because it attracted you when you were in your computer programming phase looking for your people.
Yes.
Did you go to shows at the other theaters at Gotham and Chicago City? So so you did sort of like a survey of all the theaters.
Yes.
Okay. What was your takeaway and why did UCB pull you in?
I love that question.
Thank you so much.
And I'm going to answer it.
Okay.
The UCB had two things. The UCB had a community you could be a part of. Like you could, every other place I went to, they just wanted you as an audience member. You bought a ticket to their show and that was it. You weren't like part of the community. But if you took a class at UCB, they like indoctrinated you. They were like, come to Herald Night, go see ASCAT. See every show. And then if you went to the bar after, there were people there you talked to. You got like attached to the personality. I mean, there's an unhealthy cult of personality version of this, but you became like fans of people. You'd be like, oh, I want to see Andy Secunda in any show that he does. Or I want to see Jackie Clark, anything she's in. It's like, oh, Jackie Clark's moving Herald teams. I got to go see the new team she's on. And that wasn't true anywhere else. Everywhere else was just like isolated shows that you paid like $15 for a ticket for. You regarded it like Chicago City Limits at a short form show that was pretty good, actually. I mean, we like to crap on short form as long form people, but a good short form show is great. And it was like a good show.
Yeah.
But you'd pay $15, go see this short form show and then just leave. There was no like community to get a part of or to root for. The show was kind of the same every time.
How did you feel that community at UCB as you're walking out of that $5 show the first time? Are there people saying, hey, come to the bar, come to McManus, or like?
No, yes. It was really classes that did that part. Like in my class, people'd be like, we're all going to McManus.
Right.
Who wants to go? But even just seeing the show, when you walked out, they handed you like a program that listed the other shows that week. And then some of them would be highlighted. And I'm sure like looking at a program and seeing that there's free shows, you're like, shows, okay. $5 shows. It'd be like, I guess I'll come to see, what's the robot TV? I guess I'll go see the free robot TV show at midnight on Friday.
Right.
That sounds
zero.
Even the
stakes.
fact that it was midnight was kind of wild. I was like, a midnight show? Like that's sort of crazy. Like you need to have like shows that are for learning and for weirdness. And you're not promising they're going to be great.
Right.
And the ticket price is free or very little. And it builds into your expectations that it can be kind of a clusterfuck. I also think like people who are inclined to like improv, they'll like even a bad improv show will intrigue them.
Sure.
And if you are inclined to not like it, even the best improv show leaves you cold. Because when I was discovering the hidden kingdom of UCB, I would drag my normie friend. I was like in love with it. I was like, you got it. I'd drag people to the worst possible shows. I'd be like, you got to see Mortal Kombat. And people would be like, this sucks. I'd be like, you know what? Now that you were sitting next to me, I could see that maybe this was a crazy show. But I'd be like, okay, next week, come see The Swarm. The Swarm doesn't miss.
You're like the acid jazz fan of your office. Yeah. You have got to just trust me. It's 8 hours. It's by the hour 7, you're going to get it.
I know, exactly. I was that bad. But I tried to learn. I'd be like, all right, let's go see the improvised movie. Feature is like fun and fast, and they're really good. And I would bring people to shows, or let's come see ASCAT. There's like SNL people are on stage.
Yeah,
like,
that's an easy sell.
Yeah, this is like built to be accessible and fun. And I remember bringing this normal friend of mine to an ASCAT, and it was so good. There was like Tina and Rachel and Adam McKay were on stage, and the UCB4, which meant you had Amy Poehler. They were in their prime of doing improv a lot. fast, great show, crowd exploding. And we got outside and my friend was like, they should have let, and he meant Amy, they should have let that one girl do more. Like, it's like, yes, she's the best one, but like,
that's your takeaway? That's your takeaway? Headline?
This was a $5 show.
Right.
And it was great. And I was just like, and then I would take some people to see Herald Night with not good Herald teams in the old days. Bad. Right?
Yeah.
And
learning.
And if they were inclined to like improv, they'd be like, that was pretty cool. They'd be like, oh, I kind of like the artsy, weird opening. And I was just sort of like, you either like it or you don't. Like, you can't waste time trying to sell people on this. They either have the weird demented gene that makes them sort of attracted to the act of making things up, or you don't. And so, okay, on the other side of that, programming, it's like, don't waste time trying to win over the normal people. They have bad taste and they like stupid shit. Just do the stuff that you like as an improv nerd. And it'll attract the people that it's meant to attract.
Right. And the room will be lit up. And
just like, this doesn't have to be
there
for everybody. I want the acid jazz rock. I want the punk rock challenging stuff. Challenging both because it's being done by people who don't quite have a handle on it yet. Challenging because the idea is a little crazy. I want both. I mean, DCM, Del Close Marathon, give me those 2 a.m. shows.
Oh, God, so
where they
funny.
thought of the idea last week. Remember when Fernie and Berg did the CISO executives?
I was in that, yeah.
Oh, God, what a funny
show.
funny,
yeah.
So, or did you see Dr. Cockenstein and
nope.
They did like Dr. Cockenstein and like Ballzilla or something, where it was like two guys came out with like a dildo around there, like the cheesiest, bluest character ideas, where they look like they're going to set up to do 15 minutes of like dick jokes, and then at minute 2 they have an epiphany of like, what are we doing with our lives? And then it's 13 minutes of just like regretting all of their choices.
Existential crisis.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, I love it. I love this show.
I mean, DCM was so great for concept shows.
Yeah. And DCM's got room for that. But I mean, I think there's room for that in everyday programming.
Totally. Yeah. And why not? Yeah. And it's a fun palate cleanser to do a silly show too.
So I would go to UCB in those old days, and really up until, and this still happens to some degree, but as opposed to any other improv theater, there was like a joy. It looked like the shows were being done by people who actually liked improv comedy, actually liked long form improv. So even the Herald Night that I got sick of, like premise heavy, super full initiations, there were people who loved it doing it. I don't know. Like there's got to be a mixture of like, we're being responsible about making our shows funny, but we're not kidding ourselves and trying to reach people that we can't reach.
I want to just hit you with some straight up prov questions.
Okay.
Do you have favorite types of characters to play?
Me?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, okay. Do I want them to work or not? If I want them to work, then I'm going to be a defeated, over it, angry dad. Can't miss. I just have to walk out and be like, honey, look, stop divorcing me, or whatever. Like,
stop divorcing me. That's a great sitcom title.
Yeah. That will hit. But the ones I like to play are the ones that are, okay, I like to play religious zealots. Uh-huh. I think they're fun.
Of religions
either
that
like
we
literally
know,
a
or like
religious
cult
zealot,
leaders,
or just like too into like a baseball zealot.
Yeah.
Jazz zealot. Snob, record snob.
Yeah.
The way I am about like,
I was going to say it's really close to you.
Yes. But I think they're so fun.
Yes.
Even dumber than I am. Like just like blind.
Blind passion.
Yeah. Just like an idealist who can't believe that you don't like Dungeons and Dragons as much as they do.
And is that fun for you because it's also sort of a repository for all of your random knowledge? Like you can deep cut on specifics.
I'm allowed to just dump info and I don't have to do as much emotion.
How can you possibly choose a bugbear for that dungeon creature?
Beethoven's Fourth Symphony? Okay, whatever. I guess you're afraid of the hard stuff.
The hard stuff. And those characters don't always hit because it does get too specific, or
it's no fun for anybody. It's no fun for anybody.
I would love to see that or play with that.
It really ruins it.
No, man.
I like playing. Okay, like I'm trying to be honest here. What characters? Okay, I like being put upon customer service people. I love a podium guy. I love a guy behind a podium for any reason.
Like driving like a town hall sort of game and fielding the
town
questions.
Hall, press conference, debates.
Is that because
lectures.
you like driving the scene, or you like reacting and having I think I like
stilted formal presentation. Makes me kind of laugh.
Yeah.
I love apology scenes, apologizing for something that happened right before the scene started. Like, hey man, I'm sorry. I puked. I puked right on your dog.
I love that.
Yeah.
I used to teach an exercise in boot camp where it's like I would give them a confession that they had to make, something really dark. So it would be like, I drained your bank account and used it to buy drugs or something, or like I sold crack to your 7-year-old, like something really dark and bad.
Yeah.
And the exercise was they would have to work their way to that confession by doing a justification first. So making it like sympathetic, like how we play in real life.
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, you know how like my mom, her chemo is like, they have to extend it and the insurance ran out. Yeah. I've been like really desperate. So you're like setting the stones for the apology. And I'm really sorry, but I sold crack to your kid, you know? Yeah. But I'm going to buy it back or I'm going to take it back. I'm not going to let her smoke it. Yeah. Like just justifying I love apology prop.
Me too. I think it's so funny.
It buys you so much room in a scene because you can't
anything that's past oriented is so much better than future oriented.
Right.
Like if it's like, let's make plans to do this thing tomorrow, doesn't work. But let me apologize for what I did yesterday, works.
Right.
Or even let's celebrate what we did yesterday, works. But let's get excited about what we're doing tomorrow, doesn't work.
Right. Because if it's happened yesterday and it was a big deal, we're in the aftermath and we're having to...
affected by it. We can do, if this is true, what else is true?
Yeah.
Yeah. Present prov is the best, but past prov is a close second, and future prov doesn't work.
Right. I wonder what's going to happen is not a scene.
Doesn't work.
But here we are sitting at a dining room table and we have ash on our face, and let's talk about the explosion.
What I think is interesting is when you're watching improv students, if somebody says to the other one, hey, do you want to go to a game tomorrow? They'll go, I don't know. But if you say to them, hey, wasn't that game yesterday good? They'll be like, it was great.
Right.
And I'm like, they're both made up events, and one of them you just agreed that you liked, and one of them you were on.
Yeah.
Because you just, what's wrong with you? Like the past and the future both don't exist, but one of them you're on board with and one you're not. It's crazy.
It also sort of spins off of that adage, like it's better to make a statement than ask a question in improv.
Yes, right.
If it happened yesterday, we can both mine that for specifics.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I didn't think you ate too many hot dogs. I think it's fine. Like it evens out with calories, you know.
Yeah.
But if we wonder if we're going to have hot dogs, like that's not a specific.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't know what's going to a thing in the future is a question. A thing in the past is a statement. Wow. Put that in your fucking book, Will. 2.0. Do you always say 1.0, 2.0? Or you're the only person I've ever met who does. I'm a 2.0.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
Do that on purpose?
I do it on purpose.
To thumb your nose?
To let people know that I was a tech guy and I'm smarter than them.
Do all tech people say dot?
I feel like 1.0, 2.0 is a real techie, like software version thing.
I guess .com. I don't say .com.
Yeah.
They say
1.0, 2.0. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a version thing, version 2.5. Yeah.
Oh, I know that. But yeah, I say point instead of dot.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I guess, I don't know.
Do you have
have you ever seen a marriage proposal get rejected in an improv scene? All marriage proposals are accepted, I think.
Yeah.
People love to propose marriage and they love to accept it.
I have seen it be rejected.
Okay.
I can't think of a specific example, but it is rare. And I think also, and we could spend hours talking about this, but this starts treading on like the myth of yes and, like where you have to say yes versus just yesing the reality. And, you know, like if somebody proposes marriage, you don't have to answer yes, but you do have to yes the reality. If they propose to you, you can't be like,
the hard part is like you have to change your like own history. Like if somebody proposes to you, whether you say yes or no, what you have to do is, okay, there has been a relationship of some kind, probably intense enough that one person feels like this is the right move.
Yeah.
And like, that's the part you have to say yes to. This is not a stranger. This is somebody who, I mean, you could do the kind of thing where somebody's impulsive, but probably the offer is like you're in a relationship with somebody where somebody's proposing.
It also depends on the context. If I'm in a short form show and somebody proposes to me, it's a real funny 2-line scene to be like, oh my God, let me think about it, you know, or funny to be like, I just wanted to order my coffee or whatever, you know, like you twist it or flip it.
Yeah.
But if the context is we're in a long form show. Also, is this proposal happening as an initiation? If so, I'm probably going to say yes to it just to be a neutral responder until they get their idea out, right? Unless it's an organic show and we know it's an organic show and there was no opening to pull from, and then maybe I'll make a different choice, but it will be that I know them.
Yeah.
All of these things are in the matrix of, it's like a flow chart, right? It's like, which show am I in? Who am I playing with?
I just like, I'm sure you've got like this when you're in the flow of teaching a lot in a short amount of time, like things that people habitually say yes to or habitually say no to. It's so arbitrary. Like you could say no to a proposal and have it be a fine scene.
Yeah.
Well, here's what anybody always says no to. Honey, does this tie look good? The answer is always no. 100% of the time.
Yeah,
and I'm just like, why?
Why?
What is in your brain that thinks that's... I mean, it really doesn't matter that much, but I'm like fascinated with nobody likes ties.
You know who's good at saying yes to those moments is Johnny Meeks.
Oh, yeah.
He's very good at being... And he'll add a specific... He'll be like, yeah, I'm a fan of flying tacos. I don't know. It makes you seem fun.
Yes.
You're going to get that promotion today. I believe in you.
Right. He is really good at that.
He's really good at that. Yeah.
I guess so much of my stupid quote unquote career is teaching that I forget that what is it like when good people do improv? Like I'm writing these Substack essays.
Will's students.
And my friend Chris Gethard will text me the next day basically criticizing them or questioning them. And he's like, all of your essays are like criticizing just bad improv. Like, of course it's bad when bad people do it.
Right.
Like when good people do a full premise initiation, it's great.
Yeah.
And when bad people do it, it's bad. And I'm like, well, what works for the bad people? Like,
and here's where I want to circle back to what we hit on earlier. I don't think there's a replacement for reps and time and experience.
Yeah.
And I think, yes, you can try to shortcut like into a way of better explaining these things or of landing on something that students are more comfortable with while they practice. But ultimately, it's like learning an instrument. Like I'm not going to pick up a guitar and be good. Joe Satriani in a year.
Yeah.
Like I have to fucking put in years of work.
Yeah. Or just an obsessive amount of time within that year or something. Like there's no shortcut. You put the time in one way or the other.
Yeah. And then with a great amount of time comes not only facility with the instrument and an ability to play different songs and sound good, then play without mistakes and then play without looking at the guitar. Then beyond that is another plateau where it's like, well, what's my voice as a songwriter or how do I put a spin on these chords? You know, like why does Coltrane's jazz sound different than Miles Davis's jazz? And why do those combos play differently together? And then beyond that is like, what are new things I can do with this? You know, it's like, it's never ending. But I think to try to get new students to be Jimi Hendrix is maybe a goal that then now you're comparing them.
Yeah.
Now you're writing Substack rants about people that are apples to oranges.
Right. I think I can do it. I'm gonna get new improv students to be Jimi Hendrix in like 2 months.
Awesome.
I'm gonna figure it out.
And on that note, I want to remind students who are listening that to take Will's class. Yeah. But also that improv is one of the maybe the only art form where you have to practice it in front of people. You don't get to go in your room and be bad at guitar scales for a year. So don't be hard on yourself if it's feeling clunky or you're not getting laughs. You are learning your instrument right now. You don't have the luxury of being a magician who gets to spend 8 years hiding a coin before he proves to people that the coin is hidden. Like you have to do it in front of people. So don't feel bad if it feels like you're playing with your pants down. You are. We all did. We all did it. It'll get easier and better. And someday Will won't be mad at you.
Right, but not today.
But not today.
Today I'm furious.
Will, thank you for being
yeah.
here.
Thanks for having me.
Is there anything you want to plug? Your book, your school, anything else?
I guess check out WGImprovschool.com if you're in LA or online. We've got fun classes. And if you want to read a real hodgepodge of disorganized improv ideas, get my book, How to Be the Greatest Improviser on Earth. Guaranteed to work. It's available on a little website I call Amazon.
.com.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here, Will. And I look forward to getting mad about your Substack.
Great.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. If you have a question about improv that you would like me to ask a future guest, email it to yesalsopod@gmail.com and I will get it on the show. If you're a fan of the show, follow us on Instagram @yesalsopod. And please help us out by liking, rating, reviewing, clicking, sending, talking, and blasting us to your improv communities. That will help us out a lot. If you're a theater who would like to host us for a live recording and improv show, let us know at yesalsopod@gmail.com. A huge shout out to Ryan Rosenberg, who produced this thing with his generous help and his unlimited knowledge about all things podcast. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. No, we won't, Suzi. That's not how podcasts work. They will see. They won't even see us. They will listen to us. So it's actually the opposite of both things you said. Thanks for listening, and you will listen to us next week. Maybe. I don't know.